guys, I'm here with Jared Murphy. He's just wrote this amazing book called "It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us," and I'm gonna let you tell them everything that you're on, because you're on a million things. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, we could cover that quick. I've actually never done this before. So yes, I co-host Conflict Radio for many episodes, but Michael's been doing it for years. And we have 54,000 subscribers, and we do live shows tonight, actually, although this is recorded. But the last Thursday of every month, we do a live show, but we interview people every week. We've done, I've interviewed Michael Cremo a few times, of course, and Christopher Dunn and Mohammed Ibrahim, who you met in Egypt, I believe. And then of course, and was probably spent a few weeks with them. But then I am also on Dark Hour Paranormal every month. I'm on Everything Imaginable, Forbidden Knowledge News, Three Beards. And I, of course, host my own show, notaliens.com. It's on notaliens.com, and it's for members. And then, of course, I like to keep doing field research, and I have archaeological work planned at the end of May, or at the May 1st, the end of April. I will be doing a live lecture that you can buy tickets for. And if you want to listen to virtually, you can. Otherwise, if you want to show up, I will be doing an in-person meet and greet and book signing and lecture for 3 hours at America's Stonehenge in New Hampshire, May 1st. And so the lecture will be in the morning from about 9 or 10 to 1. And then there'll be an opportunity to visit America's Stonehenge, and we can walk the site. It'll be really awesome. And other than that, I'm on a number of shows. I've been on Coast to Coast, Richard Hoagland's After Midnight. I've been on a lot of shows.
Yeah, you have. Yeah.
Simon, I have this great friend now in Scotland named Simon, and his show, the SLK or Slick or Silk, I guess depends on how you read it. The SLK podcast is how it's spelled. And Simon King is a really, it's unbelievable. He's a perfectionist professional. And I've been able to, I was able to meet him just as he was starting his new podcast, but the man has an incredible ability to dissect and manage guests in a way that the conversations are really deep. And so, and again, spelled SLK podcast, and he's out of Scotland. So yeah. So since you like to travel, he's also invited, he specifically invited me. So Simon hears this. I'm going to invite anyone I want now. So, since you know Jennifer and you like to travel, you guys should, definitely, you should join for that.
So you obviously
nothing like a few ruins in Scotland.
Yourself.
I mean,
see, but this is why I said, like, you had to introduce yourself.
Yeah.
That's so many things. That's amazing. And you totally have the gift of the gab. I've listened to like 7 or 8 of these podcasts now in preparation for this, and you're such an eloquent speaker. I love it. It's amazing. So what got you into
I did not pay her for that.
You did not. That's genuine. He really is. Okay, so what got you into this whole field of what's going on with the ancient history?
That's a great question. I can remember being 5 years old, and nothing more interested me than being an archaeologist. And I actually have never talked about that specifically on any show, but they're like, what got you into it? Well, I've had a lifelong interest. So 2 things happened. One is, one of my heroes in my life was my mother's father. He was a tank commander in World War II. He was landed at D-Day in a tank. He was in the 7th Armored Division. And he fought through Belgium and Holland and back to France for Battle of the Bulge, and was in a tank to Berlin. So from the time that I could start reading history, which was about 2nd grade, where they would let you take anything you wanted home. And I started with anything that had pictures of World War II. And then I kind of went backwards and I went forward with history, but I had wanted to be an archaeologist. And then of course, Star Wars comes out, to date myself. And then I'm like, I want to tell stories and I want to write books. And so that never went away. And then I got into elementary school, and before you know it, I'm playing the violin. I didn't know I was good at it, but I ended up in the more advanced groups. I ended up playing seriously till I was 21. And so I always had an interest in learning the arts, but also questioning. I grew up Irish Catholic. And so the questions that could not be answered, the kind of the Da Vinci Code sort of stuff. It was just a constant why this, why that. But the one thing that did not interest me over all these years was, oh, I want to find mummies like Indiana Jones. I don't want to, who cares about those old big rocks? That's lame. I mean, clearly, I've seen the pictures at the Natural History Museum. That's all loincloth, like rock banging. They're not advanced. That's all stupid. I want to find golden statues and mummies and like uh not just Indiana Jones, but that show that was on a couple years, the Golden Monkey. I want like, yeah, I want to do all the adventurous stuff you see. Abbott and Costello and the Mummy. How about the Mummy with Brendan Fraser? I wanted to do that stuff. And it wasn't as I kept this lifelong interest. I had written before. I've actually written things before. The first thing I actually ever published had nothing to do with history at all. Not talked about this on air with anyone ever anywhere. Is I wrote a book called Off the Stall: The Gospel According to the John. It's 8 chapters of bathroom wall writing. I was Bart. Oh yeah. So yes, I literally went around and wrote down for a good time call. I actually like, but people wrote, like, I organized it. There's politics, political hate, political correctness, sex, sexual frustrations, general desire. Like, I organized it all off: gay life or pop life. I mean, you would not believe the variety that gets written on a
There is
bathroom
a variety.
wall.
Yeah, I didn't know it
There's
was
a
like that in the men's, because it's like that in the women's, but I didn't know
Oh,
it was like this in the
yeah, because there's always that testimonial wall for one particular girl that maybe one person did know or didn't, but then suddenly 50 people have contributed to that one girl, and it's like that poor girl. So like I have a whole chapter called Susan in the Hall because it was just like one girl, and it's like, okay, oh my gosh, this whole wall is filled with information about this one person. But yeah, I actually, so not a very serious work or delve and dive into it. Actually made it into some bookstores. It was just hilarious. So here I am. I decided I was going to get around to writing. I had worked on a prior period fictional piece called Tactics and Empire, and it's about espionage during the Civil War in England. And the more I tried to write fiction, I ended up spending. I like to do the research because I'm a history buff. So here I am finding out that the truth is stranger than fiction. No matter every time I took a turn to write something fictional, I ended up spending 17 months doing research, finding out that, oh my gosh, people wouldn't believe it. And I kept on it, and then but I didn't publish and then what I ended up and it was picked up by St. Martin's Press. They were interested. They wanted the first 3 chapters, and then other things happened. So I let not worth the podcast right now. But what ended up happening is I was going to start a new fictional work, and I've been fascinated forever with quantum mechanics and quantum physics and spintronics, and I had a background, I'd done computing, and here it is. I'm really fascinated by these Paracas long-skulled people. And so literally it couldn't have been more than an hour into series. Like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to do the real research, just like I did for my Tactics and Empire. And I'm going to work out, uh, you know, a fictional story about reanimating mummies, because we're just on the cusp of that. And those mummies are going to have kind of scrambled brains, and they're going to have a handler, and they're going to and governments are going to compete to bring back the oldest DNA evidence they can find into reanimated people, so that they can then use their recall to find any lost advanced technology that's still buried on the planet.
Ooh, that's a cool concept. As if like memory is stored in the DNA. So like the oldest DNA has like
Yeah.
more memory.
Yep. And I write about that in the book, is that, we've proved that worms can pass down, of course it starts with traumatic memories, that you can actually pass down memories, that genetic memory is a real thing, that instinct isn't just I don't know why, but I'm running up the dark basement steps, and I don't know why I'm running faster and faster and faster.
Mhm.
And there's a reason. It's not just that there were creepy crawly spiders, snake things in the basement. I think that we have a number of stored memories. And so I started on that premise. 1 hour into research, and I'm on YouTube, and there was a video, because I'm specifically looking about information about, first off, it was really elementary. Who are the oldest mummies on Earth? There were Paracas preserved to at least 9,000 years. And yes, there are those mummies in Mongolia, the red-headed, red-bearded, and there were other mummies that were ultimately going to prove out to be over 12,000 years. But at the time, and for the most part, and all over because of the arid climate in Peru, you have the Paracas, and they are like 9,000 years old, gets you really close to the Younger Dryas. So you have this world catastrophe 11 to 13,000 years ago. And so here's my chance to write a story about the Paracas. Well, I end up, oh, Colonel Percy Fawcett goes to look for the lost city of Z, just the Brad Pitt movie. And I'm not ruining it for everyone. The whole premise is that he ends up going into the jungle and he's never seen again. Everyone already knows that he's lost with his son and his best friend, and at one point in the last 30 years, I believe they think they came up with his bones, but I guess that's been argued by the family because they haven't wanted to admit that they found him. But either way, a man had been surveying all of Brazil for the Queen of England and for England, and he kept finding pottery shards. And I'm watching this video like day 1 or 2 of research somewhere in here. And the first thing they do with this new adventure guy with the Indiana Jones hat, of course, you can't not have the hat or wear khaki. And so here he is, and this archaeologist says, "Hey, I want to stop and show you something. We're going to go to the last village anyone ever saw Colonel Percy Fawcett at." And this is called Terra Preta. It's an engineered soil, and what we mean is it's really mysterious because it's really ancient, and soil scientists have looked at it for 100 years. No one's ever figured out how to remake it. It's the richest growing soil on earth. It has minerals that we can't duplicate otherwise. It has, they don't specifically say this, but I find out later it has piezoelectric properties. It can filter carbon dioxide. It self-replicates, which a Kansas professor has been working on.
What do you mean
And
it self-replicates? I didn't know that.
oh yeah, yeah. It never really de-energizes. It manages itself.
Okay.
Uh-huh. So this is day 2, 3 of research, and the all she does is take him into a dig-in pit. So he goes in, and the Terra Preta is about, it's like 12 feet above his head, and she goes, "Yeah, it's Terra Preta all the way down." And he's like, "Hey, can I touch this pottery?" And I do mention this in the book. You can go look up the episode, but he's like, "I'm not," he goes, "I'm not ruining anything by touching this pottery." She goes, "No, we've done everything we're going to do with this." And it's like, "Yeah, it's 12 feet thick." And she goes, "Yeah, it's really interesting. There's at least an area twice the size of Spain or Great Britain."
Yeah, yeah, I saw you write that in there. It's
And
twice
I'm
as
like,
big as Great Britain. I'm like, what?
yeah. And then it's like, hold on, we don't know how to make it. It's engineered. And everywhere on earth, dynastic peoples, which are Egyptians, Aztecs, Mayans, Olmecs, Toltecs, indigenous peoples from Australia to America, there are lots of people who have taken over or uh, been living near it, more advanced humans. Right now, we have 150 something tribes. We leave them alone, essentially, and they live on the planet and they do what they do. Meanwhile, this woman says, "Yeah, this terra preta, the identical recipe. Oh, it's in North Africa. It's in Central America. Oh, and it's in Australia." And I'm like, does anyone see a timeline issue? If
Yeah.
you have Terra Preta, that's all over. And then I start looking, it's not just Terra Preta, and that's just Portuguese for basically black soil, black earth. And then it turns out that there is a illegal export of black soil called Chernozems in Ukraine. And then it turns out this Chernozems it's in the United States, it's here in Minnesota, it's all through the Great Plains, it's in
Ew,
Canada,
Texas. Yeah.
it's everywhere. And you're like, hold on. So
So how
forget the
similar is that Terra Preta, or are they two different?
well, it's a different, it's like Pepsi and Coke. Is it, they're both colas, I
Right. Okay.
guess, but they're
The
different
engineered
recipes.
soil, either way.
Right, right. And so then the other issue is, well, isn't it just that a forest fire happened and it trapped a bunch of animals and there was a bunch of leaves and
No, it's a
you know
consistent mixture, right?
yeah, yeah, right. It's like a potting soil that you would go to your local big box retailer and buy and say, "I need potting soil," and it would have a certain amount of chemicals in it. And so, and yes, and it's like, how do soil scientists who are, I mean, there's big business, whether you name off the big corporations that there've been, Netflix documentaries on, like Monsanto,
Mm.
there's serious business for many, many years on soil for, excuse me, for growing food, which includes right here, soil crop rotation. That's a given. Like most people know, it's like, well, you got to rotate the crops. Well, that was developed on the Kelly farm here in Minnesota. that's still a working scientific research center off of Highway 10 that you can tour. There's a visitor center. The Kelly Farm was where they developed the science around crop rotation, which then after the Civil War, they also needed to teach how to do this in the South. And that technology passed down because Kelly was also a Mason, which is a whole nother story.
Mhm.
And then, of course, it gets worldwide propagated that, well, you got to rotate crops, right? But here's this Terra Preta that's been looked at even under electron microscopes, and they can't work it out. And it also has piezoelectric properties, which are really important. That we're not talking like electrocute you. We're just talking
Like quartz sand,
community.
piezoelectric properties such as like what is it? Just like quartz, like fine granulars of quartz or something, or how?
Well, as in like Morse code, like you could pretty much run a current. You could run a current through the soil, which means that just like when you walk barefoot and you have an electron discharge, it's not just as elementary as, oh yeah, of course, the earth attracts electricity and then it goes to the center of the earth and it keeps, magic, whatever. And it's not that simple. It's a matter of there was a society, and this is where my research starts. 3.5 years later, when you have engineered soil all over the planet and it has all these different qualities, one is you start thinking, oh, they were using it for growing food. But what we're learning now and have since NASA invented aeroponics, which is where you atomize water to 30 to 50 microns. And the atomized water is something that the roots of plants, including seeds, can use to sprout and become the plant. And that's important if you're going to go on long space voyages. So NASA in the 70s had developed a way to grow without soil and a minimal amount of water. And that's what aeroponics is, because there's aquaponics where you're doing aeroponics mixed with fish, which are in water, but it's not hydroponics where the plants are floating in the water, because that takes a lot of water. But aeroponics is a lot like those misters when you're at a bar and it's super fine mist. It hits your skin, you feel cool, but it evaporates like basically instantly. And so we're learning that we don't need soil to grow food. So part of developing my next book and the work that I'm doing with Jennifer Deo, the archaeologist, her and I are, continuing. There's just too much in one book. You can't really expand on it. You can't really you have to build out the process. And part of one of the things to imagine then is one, I don't believe we're at the largest population we've ever been at. I think we're actually not even close. But it's not because when that woman said on that documentary that, oh, there's an area that we're guessing is twice the size of Great Britain or Spain, and then they don't know and they're not done. It's not like there's somebody taking a core sample every square mile to say, well, we figured out how much Terra Preta is here. They're not doing that. So the process for us to figure out, we know that Terra Preta and other engineered soils also filter heavy metals and they filter carbon dioxide. So if you have a worldwide population, which currently Michael Tellinger actually gave me this analogy, uh, and he has to get credit for this, is that right now, if you round up to our world population of 8 billion, at the time it was like 7.7 or something, or the estimate was, but if you took 8 billion and gave them an acre, they basically would live in 2 South Africas or 2 Texases.
Mhm.
If you gave every human being an acre, now you can make an argument, well, you need to build roads and you need to build shopping centers. So we're still talking about the entire planet basically being unoccupied. And
Well,
I
I
don't
have
think
heard that
based on,
whole concept of like basically the world's population could live in about the way San Francisco's like their three-story thing,
mm,
that density within like the size of New Mexico.
you could triple or quadruple them up like that. You could do it in you could do it in one Texas, give everybody multi-story living.
Yeah.
And again, that's still an acre per person. And so that is a significant amount of land. That is still a significant amount of space left. It's
That
literally the
just
whole
makes you
planet.
realize how much we have left to explore. Like we act like we've
Yeah.
built it all up, but I mean, like that's just so much. We really live amongst these little highways and these little roads and these little towns that we can go in, and we don't really know what's out there.
No, I think you're right. I think the blinders that you just did are a great example, except I would add one on the bottom and one on the top. Like
Oh,
people really live boxed in. I mean, they live in they and to a point, what do we say? We say we're 15 to 20% conscious. And within that perspective, and then the theories being proved out over and over about, even in the last 70 years, the idea of a collective human consciousness is there. Ties into genetic memory. It ties into what some people would call paranormal, and say, oh well, I remember being Cleopatra. Why don't you remember being Bill the pooper scooper guy at
yeah,
the zoo? Why are you always someone famous? Aren't you just? And then what's true is that some people do psychic they do psychic therapy, where there have been, I've even seen published examples of people saying, well, yeah, I think I lived on a farm and I think I was a farmer. And of course, given how populated the earth has been, and given the random possibilities that they literally point to an area that they have verified, like, hey, we just went to a field where you said you lived and there's a farm, and they have no idea, they've never been there. There's verified second checks that they're not, like, they didn't go sort it out first and then have a dream and then make it up. So there are people who think that they were normal people, but then therein lies the question. We have a very elementary understanding, not that we're all very spiritual beings, but we have a very elementary understanding. We relate to our spiritual being through a very indoctrinated Western or Eastern religious post Younger Dryas. Definitely in the last 6,000 years, we have developed religious institutions which are not who you are spiritually. They're just corporate institutions, and most of the world is not Christian. That's what's so
yeah.
fascinating, and
But it
it's
doesn't matter.
fun.
All the monotheistic or anything that like makes you look to something else takes away your own personal sovereignty. And it's
Yeah,
and that promotes like your lack of exploring anything within yourself. So I think that's been promoted all over the world, no matter what religion you are.
you have teed me up for the first time ever to finally be able to quote Van Halen, and God rest Eddie, but Van Halen, but uh, mine all mine. Stop looking up, start looking in. Be your own best friend. Stand up and say, "This is mine, mine all mine." That's
Nice.
that's it.
Good
That
quote.
is that's OU812. That is like the best. Okay, I love Van Halen, but that is definitely an incredible album, start to finish. But mine all mine. Um, yeah, that's I think a really great point, in that we put those religious filters on, and then we negate the complexities of not only ourselves but of our past. So we have people like Wim Hof, superhuman people, reactivating these abilities to consciously control your immune system, consciously control your inflammatory response, and then at the end of the day, uh, there there are people who try to monetize that and hide it. And then there's people like Wim and Stig Severinsen that are like breathology, that I did not do Stig's version, but he's the guy who sat on one breath for 22 minutes in a pool of basically ice cold water. And here's the thing, it's not and he's broken a couple of Wim's records, but the issue isn't the longevity of not breathing. The issue is the conscious control of your inflammatory response, your immune system.
Well, they've
And
given Wim
then,
Hof like diseases, like
yeah,
injected diseases, and he's
yep,
been like,
yep.
"Nope."
Yeah, and those documentaries are out there for people to watch. The first time Wim came to America, I was there with the first 100 something people. I
Did you
learned how
do
to
the
Wim
like
Hof.
cold water
We
submerging thing?
we did the whole thing, all of us together. I went out with three friends, and the four of us got to meet Wim Hof, and not like stand in line. I mean, if you do a Wim Hof thing, if it's not a giant, I know he's doing like really large events now, but Wim doesn't stay on a stage, and he's there with everyone and he talks to everyone. Wim is exactly how you see him in the show. You're just going to feel like you know him. And I got to meet with the rest of the group that was with him, but we were on Treasure Island in San Fran. It was the very first American tour, and so, or visit. So here we are, and I'm learning how to Wim Hof with Wim Hof, and we're learning the breathing technique, and all of us are sitting there, and the sensations, the feelings, have you tried it?
I have his app, and I've done like the, all those things where
Yeah.
I've tried it, but I have not tried the cold water.
Yeah. How the breathing go?
I mean, awesome. Like I noticed, I felt like I was gonna faint. Like you definitely have to be in a sitting down position,
Oh
or
yeah, don't do it
had
while you're
some like
driving.
pillows around me, kind of
Yeah.
thing. was like, all
Yeah,
right.
no glass tables. Stay away from the glass tables.
Yeah, I
Uh,
actually want to get more into it. I kind of felt like I needed more of a one-on-one, or not one-on-one. I needed an
yeah, you need.
in-person thing instead of an app.
Yeah, yeah. So I do think So we were the first people in America to do it, and I did it because I had a friend with an autoimmune disease, and he said, "Have you heard of this guy Wim Hof?" And I said, "No." Well, he has an autoimmune disease and had been taking shots, and he through becoming paleo slash kind of a version of it, and he was always looking at stuff that would help him. He's in epically good health, but he tells me about Wim Hof, and I go Google him, and I'm like, "Hey, did you know he's gonna be in San Fran?" And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "We're gonna go." And so that's how that came up. And then the next thing you know, I'm sitting there, and we're doing the breathing technique, and we do our exhale. And I climb. I like to climb. I like outdoor, indoor, just rock climbing. And so my friends are all climbers, and so it's a decently healthy group. But we're sitting there with people who are like yogis, and I don't know who's there, but it's like it was some pretty diehard people because it was like just like 100 people ain't that many people when you're all in the room. And Wim is there. We are doing it, and the first time we exhaled and we didn't breathe, and again you don't force it, but we went 2 minutes and 34 seconds
Yeah, that's
at the first time, and I remember the first time I went 5 minutes without breathing. And then I'm like, oh, this is trippy. Because I use a certain set of, I'm all about brain entrainment and self experimentation. And I really do list that in my bio for a reason. And so here I am. And I noticed like there's so many things going on inside you. Like, did you get the fuzzy feelings at all? Did you get
yeah,
the,
I got the tingly stuff, but I never got to a place of, I very rarely have gotten to this with the meditation and stuff in general. Like, I can't get to that place of just nothing, like absolute stillness.
yeah, I think I joke about that. I don't see that. Like when we're in yoga classes for climbing specifically, and they're like, yeah, leave your problems at the door. And I'm like, F that guy that just cut me off on the freeway. I am not thinking, I'm like, leave my problems. What are you talking about? Clouds. You're an idiot. Like I cannot stand. And by the way, you're English, you're American, you speak English. Stop trying to sound like you're Hindi. You're not. Stop using the words. Just say bend over like a dog.
Like downward dog, don't say Sinatra not or whatever. Yeah.
Whatever the hell it is. I mean, come on. You're not Hindi. Just say forward bend, left bend, right bend. Give it an American name. I mean, come on. I mean, it's just, I can order General Tso's chicken without knowing exactly, is it so? Is it to so? Is it T so? I mean, like, just, I want number 26, bend 29. But either way, it was funny listening to Wim, by the way, side note. People were raising their hand, and people were like, so do you breathe more through your nose or your mouth? And Wim Hof is famous for this, and I caught it in between because people can't actually talk entirely the way Wim is spectacular. And here he is, and he's like, oh, in through any wait, can we, oh, we can't swear on this, can we swear on
Okay,
this?
I don't care. Yeah.
All right, so this is Wim, by the way. I'm paraphrasing, but Wim's like, in through any hole, motherfucker. It doesn't matter. You like holes. You know what I'm talking about. Breathe, motherfuckers. If you have a hole, breathe. And then someone goes up and whispers to him, and they're like, oh, I hear there's kids here. I guess I'm going to have to fucking swear with it less. And it was phenomenal. That was Wim in person. And his big thing is oxygenating has nothing to do with the deified, mystified, mysterious. Like if you have to think about clouds, you are doing it wrong. And when we were breathing, what happened was is I went from like, okay, I'm gonna breathe, so I'm still gonna be thinking about what we're gonna do for lunch, or I'm gonna do what I do during any meditation. I'm going to, part of my brain's gonna be like, I'm gonna not hate this, or I'm gonna be this, I'm gonna not think that this is stupid. And then uh you get those, like you were saying, those fuzzy tingling sensations, but then there's a pulse to it. And when you're doing it regularly, I can only describe my experience with it too. And I know I've listened to other people and they've tried to explain it to people. So just for everyone out there, I'm not saying this is the same for everyone. It's definitely different. And there are definitely people who definitely they have passed out. There are things that have happened to people. But you definitely don't do it while you're driving. But here I am. And not only do I get the tingling sensations, but and again, when you do, there's a 60-day training thing. I suggest the 60-day training course. And I don't know if that's in the app. So because we were the first people in America to do it, we got a membership. And I think it was exactly for these reasons, to promote things. And but the deal is, I would not tell anyone. I don't tell anyone to watch a movie, read a book, or do anything if I didn't think it was like really epic. People have different tastes. Like, I know I'm one of the weirdos on earth. I'm not a huge fan of Dumb and Dumber. I love Jim Carrey, but I never liked Dumb and Dumber. Like,
Yeah.
I just And I like Monty Python. I like Letterkenny. I love Letterkenny. I love Rick and Morty, but I hated Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I'm
So
with
here
you
we
on that one.
are.
It was a little too dumb for me. I was kind of like, okay.
Yeah, and like Austin Powers, the first one, couldn't watch it. Like, there are very few movies I could not watch, and I'm like, this sucks. Everyone on earth loves that movie. I think most people love it. I did not, but I liked the second one, the one with Fat Bastard. God, that one was funny. The Dutch, I hate the Dutch. That one was just funny, and I did like that. So I'm not against dumb humor. I just, some things
Right. So everybody has different strokes for different.
yeah. Yeah. So here we are. When you do this technique, the thing that I found is that for every time I've done yoga and somebody's like, think of your problems and leave them at the door and be present, I'm like, I hate the guy that cut me off, and I hate you for saying that and speak English. And you're totally not Hindi. And so instead of that, when you do Wim Hof, it's like a switch. And for me, as you breathe and you do the 60-day program, you do 3 rounds of breathing, and then you do 5 rounds of breathing. And then as you dig into it, you learn that you could maybe even do the meditation for up to 45 minutes or an hour. The longest I've ever gone is not sitting. I could get into it, but I did it for 5-6 hours.
Wow.
And not just sitting though. I did it actively in movement. I took because the thing about what Wim does is he does it while he's talking to people. It's not like a mystified Tibetan tomo where they're sitting in, it's men in a secret temple doing it the secret way. And then they're cooling, they're heating frozen blankets, and they're doing this meditation. They're showing the heat signatures, and they're like, yeah, here's a secret technique that they've been doing for 3 or 4,000
Do
years.
you
And it's
keep it
like,
up on a regular basis? Do you?
yeah. So what you can do is, what I was fascinated, what originally triggered it is like Wim was, you could sit down and do the breathing technique as a meditation, but you don't have to think about the clouds. You don't think about anything. What happens is that those pulses and those fuzzinesses, but they lead into, for me, they led into a control where it was almost like an electronic beat, not like a song, but like a steady heartbeat, but not a heartbeat. So it's more like an electronic mental neural heartbeat, along with you're doing the breathing technique. And I don't know what the consistency was to it. Like 1 minute I would do an exhale and hold, it'd be 2.5 minutes. The next minute, you know, it's like, wow, the next round was 3.5, 320, 350. And then I remember, for no reason, when it went to 5 minutes, and then you're like, and it's not that you're sitting there going, I wonder how much time's passed, or I like this part of the song. There is no time in my mind to be distracted by that. There is this grounding and plug in, I believe, to everything around you, the actual, not woo woo, but the actual energy and connectivity that you really do have the potential to control, which includes, like you said, they injected Wim with a dead form of E. coli, basically, and he meditated through the inflammatory response. And then there's a whole documentary about how he brought back people he trained over the course of 10 days. And it's all documented, it's all on film, and it's all in a university lab setting. And then they all meditate through the inflammatory response. And there's these other reactions. But that's just but I saw him doing 2.5 hours. He's breaking a record. He was sitting in ice up to his neck, and he's controlling his temperature. And what I thought was fascinating is that they made a point to point out that he could talk to people. So not like a bunch of woo-woo monks in a hill, not sharing what they do. Here's Wim Hof, who's sharing with everyone all these techniques and going to all these universities and taking all these tests and showing that everyone can do this. And again, not as frequently mentioned, but as important on the Discovery Channel, considered superhuman, is Stig Severinsen, or and again, I'm just totally going to destroy his name. But here's examples of men that are consciously controlling their immune systems and their inflammatory response and their breathing. But it's not that you're sitting there going, gosh, what am I going to do in 45 minutes? If you really do it for more than 3 rounds, if you keep doing it, by the second round, I think it's harder for people to get into. So if you are distracted, maybe everyone has an internal switch that's slightly different, where you're like, I'm having a hard time just taking a full breath and then exhaling and then getting the full breath and exhaling. Because the way we were doing it the very first meeting was, it was full inhales and then a full exhale, not an over exhale, but full inhale and an exhale. And it got really loud with 100-something people doing that. But here's Wim in ice talking with people, and they make a point in one of the documentaries to say, at some points the meditation has to be revisited specifically. And Wim said, okay. And I remember he said, shut the F up, I need to focus for a minute, because they had told him his kidney, or they had monitors all over his body, and they're like, hey, this thing is getting cold. And they literally monitored him while he stopped having a casual conversation in the meditative state. He focuses again and warms, and they watch the sensor of that part of the body warm up. And that's the kind of control, I think, that's not hyper control, like turn all the soup labels the same way, like I'm a psycho control. But I think that's the kind of intimacy with engineered soil the entire human race once had.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's a good bringing that one around.
Huh? She meant for that to happen.
Yes.
It's the cosmos.
It's interesting because you mentioned the Guatemala basin, and I went to Tikal, and I was walking around in Tikal, and it's not just like, oh, there's 60,000 buildings or whatever, and they're like, people would have lived in these houses. There's like huge, like it was in New York City. It was, I don't know how
it's that big.
It's that big. And when you're actually there walking around, like I was there for 2 days, like it's really hard to get. First of all, it's really hard to get there in general, but it's also when you go up, they've only excavated like 20 pyramids. The rest of the
It's
stuff,
so sad.
There's nothing excavated, but you can just go to the top of one, and you can look up on all these peaks, and everywhere you're looking at, you can see it's an unexcavated building. That place is like one of the most fascinating ruins place I've ever been in my entire life.
What did you think? So of the ruin that you got to go up, did you see, and Jennifer and I were just talking about the Mayans and how they took, again, it's like giant megalithic block, it's like, this is not the same builder. They clearly, the Mayans came in.
Well, they have even 3 different phases of building that they attribute when you're there. They're like, oh, these were the first ones, second. I mean, yeah, there are some megalithic stuff, but also there's so much that we don't know, because they haven't they've like one archaeology, like Richard Hansen, they have one group down there doing, I mean, it's
that's it.
Yeah, that's it. And
did you meet him?
Very traditional archaeology down there. There's nobody else, but I mean,
did you meet him?
I did.
Or
I actually got to meet him. He was very nice, actually.
Oh, I'd love to talk to him. I'd love to have him on a show.
Yeah.
If you
I have his email address. So I'll see if
that's brilliant. So the reason I wanted to ask you is that if you got to the top of one of those, so what did you see personally? And this is my point for everyone listening, and I think it's an absolutely worthwhile endeavor, is to notice every time you watch one of these shows, irrelevant to what they're saying, like if they say one more time that a pyramid was used for burial, okay, and skip all the dynastic stuff. But when you see these large, 100, 800, 50-ton megalithic blocks, it's always the most complex. It's not just that they're big blocks. It's always basalt. It's always limestone. It's always granite. It's always a combination, and it always has to do with, I think, piezoelectric properties, which means I think these buildings were connected to the soil itself.
Okay, well, actually, you touched on this with Jen, and this is something I've been saying for a while, ever since I went to Egypt. I think that granite might be a mixture. I think that I think a granite might be,
It sure the hell looks like it.
yeah, because it's like the feldspar, the quartz,
Yep.
whatever. The percentages are so evenly mixed, and like, yes, there are quarries, there are places you can find that, but what if that was the concrete mixing plant?
Right, on a scale that was much larger. You
Right.
explain to me how, give me the natural, in the most theoretical sense.
Yeah, and melting lava, if it's put in the crucibles of the earth, is if it's doing this, why is it going to give you a cookie, like
Right,
a
right.
chocolate
Why
cookie?
is it that, like, in the world of Plato, how did the earth mix exactly correct percentages for consistency in a block that is actually separate stones or quartzes or crystals? How the hell did granite? And a lot of people don't realize that there is no, to the best of my knowledge, I've heard no theories on how granite's made. And that's so out there for people that I don't even talk about it, because it's like, well, we just don't know. We're going to sort it out one of these days. And it's like,
Well, I
okay.
was a geology major in my undergrad for the first 3 years. Then I became an art history major and I got a master's in art history. But anyway, the thing was, is like when I was in geology, I remember like even microscopically looking at some of this stuff going, yeah, but like this liquid would form at a different temperature than this. Like, so it doesn't even make sense that they would be so evenly distributed. It's kind of like one of those things where, get glass and stuff, everything has different melting points. And that's
Yeah.
why it became whatever it is or isn't. And so some of these conglomerate rocks don't make logical sense to me, because I don't see how the earth would have naturally done that in a molten state, which is what they argue.
How many different stones besides granite did you see in your geology classes that look like granite?
I mean, I mean, there's rose granites very popular in Egypt. There's different kinds of granites, but yeah, no, there's uh not
Well,
that many.
that's that. Well, so I'll stop leading the question. Of the stones that we find in megalithic construction, how many of them are stones that exhibit qualities that look more of manufacture themselves than rando, like, oh yeah, they built this pyramid with a polygonal block that's super random in the stone itself. It doesn't exist,
Yeah.
right?
I will say Tikal was built out of a lot of chalk. Like you could run your fingers on a brick and it would
So therein lies the issue of how much of it was rebuild, how much of it was, you're a dynastic survivor, you're a post flood survivor culture. That mainstream academia points out that about 50,000 years ago, we have Neanderthal, Denisovan, a mystery 14% human race, and us all mix. Why? How many people were left on the surface? And how many people were left surviving after now a series of catastrophes from the Younger Dryas? Forget 55,000 years ago. But here we are, and you come across what's left of a giant pyramid, and there's one that the foundation is left, or like a half a wall, and you're like, ready-made society. We
Mhm.
have spears. How hard is it then, once it's in front of you in your mind's eye, to go, well,
Let's
we
just
want
go
it
in
to
the
look,
structure that's already sort of built. Yeah.
yeah, and then there's a pile of rock over here that looks like it goes with what would have been, well, this pile, so let's restack it. And that's exactly what you see. Saxe Waman, Ollantay Tambo, Angkor Wat, everywhere. Egypt, keystone cuts that have been turned sideways and twisted, and with the usually a block. For anyone who doesn't know, keystone cuts are little metal collectors. It looks like a key between. It looks like a
Like a
dog
bow
bone
tie. Or,
sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah, and they've been connected to another polygonal block, but they're always horizontal, as if the metal was poured in. And these are ridiculous because the blocks are so big and so well connected with the polygonal construction, there's no way they're going to move. So what would be the other reason to put metal between the blocks, unless it's for piezoelectric, maybe low frequency energy reasons? And we always look at these constructions and go, well, they knew how to cut super tight polygonal construction and put these blocks together like marshmallows, and they know apparently how to engineer soil, but they didn't know anything about wood. They
Right.
didn't know anything about finished materials. So I'm
I
super
mean, and they had
curious.
sock bees. They have like these the road systems, like within, like for
Yeah,
instance,
yeah,
like the sock bees were like modern day highways or bigger. Like they're huge.
yeah. The earliest conquistadors I remember got lost in the earliest of early 1500, like 1515 or whatever it was. There was an account that said the road they came up on was bigger, badder. It stretched on straight, did not deviate. They didn't have any idea how far it went. And they said, this rivals anything we've ever seen in Rome. And now, okay, so you have to call. I'm super curious because I haven't actually met a lot of people who have actually been physically there. How much of the megalithic block did you see with the small reconstructions? How much of what was
Of every
exposed and have been?
megalithic block that we did, like there were actually a lot of really anomalous, like rounded, big. It's almost like they used them as ornamentals inside of the middle of plazas or something. But
Yeah,
there were a lot of big megalithic blocks like that. But then the base, that's the thing though, even the base of all these pyramids isn't even, I think, completely dug out. Like I don't think that
not one.
ground zero on the main part that they've reconstructed. That's the other thing. Their reconstruction's pretty reconstruction, you know.
Well, that's like what we were looking at with Jennifer when we were doing our Mayan episode just last week. Oh my gosh, it's like, how do you look at this? Anyone who's in construction, like I've been in for 20 years and doing historical remodeling, which is a joke compared to something that's tens of thousands or thousands of years or dynastically 4,000 years old. I mean, the stuff I work in is the oldest thing I've worked on is 1869, and we think that's old, and it is old, but not like
Not like
4,000 years
thousands of
old.
years. Yeah.
But the great thing about weight, gravity, uh, lentiled, cantilevered architecture, it doesn't seem to change with gravity. And so, if you're going to build something, the techniques to build something in mass, to build a single item, whether it's a skyscraper or a single family home, and I've worked commercial and residential, but the issue is when you look at it, no one builds with polygonal, well cut, well fit, well scienced blocks and then says, let's just use river rock and put it on the top and forget about wood. Let's just chop trees and put some grass on it with some mud. No, that's the story we're told and the drawings we're given at natural history museums. It's insane. And it's important for those that have heard it already. But when you can wash that away and stop using references to absolute misleading, untrue Zechariah Sitchin work and other religious goggles, and then timelines that are fictitious by of dead Victorian researchers that literally it's embarrassing that it's not updated. That's the theories that are like, well, we got to go with this because we just charged this guy 250 for 250 bills, like 250,000. He just gave us, and
Why do you think
you
that
know,
is really? Like, because I mean, it's got to be, for me, this is where the conspiratory part of me comes in, but like, it's got to be more than just, oh, it just would rock the academic world a little too much. So they don't, I mean, it's got to be more than that.
part of it is like, what happens if we said to everyone, I've tried to jump, yeah, I've tackled it. I've tried it. It frustrates me every time. Part of it says, okay, here's the truth. Big news conference. So
Where do
we
you
want to,
want?
right. So let's just say we go at it and the news conference is, hey, so we lied to everyone. We have been misleading the general public about our entire history. Now, we had good reason because there's an advanced group of humans. They are our ancestors, and they survived a massive multiple catastrophes, some of which they induced themselves. They live here because you see UFOs. They've been here as the reason you currently say that we think UFOs have always been here. Well, that's because they're our ancestors, because we've been trying to mislead you with these giant cymatic polygonal earthquake stopping frequency energy machines and well, we tried to tell you they were pyramids and tombs, and then we tried to mislead you and say that, dynastic people made them because, we can't have you understand that these were actually for regenerating, and it's likely that you have an indefinite lifespan. There's no reason for the cellular system to degrade.
Yeah.
And well, they live forever pretty much now, but they weren't quite there. And they've been basically manipulating the timeline in history because one of the other missing components is collective human consciousness. You know why Da Vinci could only come up with like a spiral corkscrew thingy with like things he could think of, is because there was a 500 million people on the planet, but now we got 8 billion. And although we have billions of academic research, the truth is that we have collective human RAM to 8 billion people, and that is an infinite amount of mind tapping that is now being used to come up with spintronics and graphene switches and quantum computers. And where we are now is because actually we ultimately need the entire global population to be back to, I'm going to just pick a number for no reason, this is a first, 120 billion. And until we get there, we're never really going to re-unlock the combination, the convergence of like the singularity. The singularity is not going to happen until we converge the total amount of humans and collective human consciousness, and the technology, and all of it will come together and the singularity will happen. But we're not there. So just so you know, everyone is basically feudally living, but we just need more people to be born than die. And we hope you have a good time while you're here. But there was no point in telling you that because there's nothing you can do. Like, how would that like?
Yeah, I guess so. But okay, so then that brings me to this whole thing. So like I think, have you looked into the inner earth theory and all that stuff, like, or like creation stuff, like
Yeah.
what
Let me give you what this is what Eric Van Daniken said in person. I remember I was at my first contact in the desert, and they went down a panel, and the last person they asked was Eric. What do you think of what do you think of the hollow earth? And he goes, I think it's complete poppycock bullshit, something. And he's recorded. You can actually get this. This is from Contact, the last one they did in Joshua Tree. And he's like, it's just rubbish. And here's the thing. He goes, do you think that, and he goes, yes. Is there large pockets of the earth? Are there large caverns? Are there, and I don't mean natural. He meant rock cut, like when he went to Bolivia with Buzz Aldrin, they were going to go look at the rock cut ruins. And there are serious underground systems that are laser cut, that are, I say laser for detail, I mean it figuratively. I'm not saying they use Star Trek lasers and made holes. I mean we have very highly advanced
machinery?
ruins that are underground. But yeah, I think that the earth is hollow. We don't really know how
Okay,
electricity,
how about this? Do you
like,
think that these advanced civilizations, like, do you think there's breakaway civilizations that live somewhere, like, and are the ones who are the UFOs that people are seeing?
right. So this is what's it is easier for everyone to understand. Oh yeah, yeah. Like even anthropologically, we're interesting to the rest of the galaxy. I mean, like we eat, we have sex, we die. I mean, who doesn't want to come study that from a dimensional force? Like that's why they're here, because we're fascinating. Like one more episode of Friends, everyone. And so the reality is that it's easier for people. Like the whole reason we came up with the 100th monkey theory is that, well, all these pyramids just simultaneously happened because humans just thought, screw it, let's all build pyramids. And that's literally what they came up with. The idea of collective human consciousness came from the idea that it was easier to accept collective human consciousness because everyone randomly decided to make pyramids than it is to go, no, there was a highly advanced human culture on this planet that failed, that fell apart, that was in massive catastrophes, and not in one catastrophe. You don't build megalithrically if you're not expecting a flood. You don't build megalithrically if you're not expecting to get
Well,
just your
and pyramids are super stable, maybe for that purpose.
right. And then we are negating all the metal, and again, if they can move a 3,000-ton block, they can cut a meta sequoia, the granddaddies of sequoias. They can manage redwoods that were 60 feet in diameter, like Hyperion, that's 380 feet tall. They could, and mind you, remember the scrub trees we see outside, that's not forest. And like, oh, I've seen 100-foot trees. No, 379-foot, 60 plus foot wide diameter. I think not only did they engineer the soil, but the trees that they managed and the wood that they had. When you look at Ollantaytambo and Sacsayhuaman and Egypt, and you look at these buildings, you think, oh yeah, they worked with stone. No, they also worked with wood. They also worked with metal. And they built buildings and they said, this far down and over under the ground, when this tectonic plate shifts, it's going to create a particular frequency. And that means that this building above ground, not to mention the foundation below ground, has to be built with the correct polygonal pattern that allows the transfer and muting of not only that earthquake, but of also managing the piezoelectric information that's coming through the ground itself to and from these buildings. This is a society that can easily manage and handle. First off, how do you get a chicken before an egg? You engineer a chicken, you make a chicken. There's no animal on earth we have found yet that we give credit to be natural biology that is not, we assume that it's natural. We find 3,000 to 5,000 creatures alive a year for the last 40 years. So what does that mean? Somehow it is still easier for people to go, yeah, there's aliens here. It's not that somebody from somewhere, someplace couldn't visit us. The issue is all the evidence in the ground shows that a very advanced human population that could manage energies, frequencies, scalar waves, high Tesla stuff that we're just rediscovering, the Paracas, the elongated skulled people, mystery human genomes. The reality is based like that city off the coast of Cuba that's 2,300 feet deep. It's not that they're ancient and made of stone. It's the complexity of the constructions. We don't know whether they were coated in metal, if they had plastics, if they were using other material sciences and nanotechnologies. What we have, though, is a constant, uh, like the lithograph, the plate, the carving of the battle over Nuremberg, over the Baltic, over northern Germany in the 1500s, of what looks like aerial combat. You have slivers of truths. You have the oldest religious record on earth, the Hindu Vedas, talking about airships and aerial combat and the gods. Those are slivers of truths. The real matter is, isn't it not more likely, based on the evidence on the ground? We could just talk like 3 episodes on what are the out of place, out of time artifacts and sciences that are showing that a highly advanced race, us humans, fell. In that falling, based on like Wallace Wagner's new book about the crossing the crevasse. I've interviewed him a few times now, and Wallace's book is talking about UFOs in the Bible, but he also mentions that a Roman army was about to go to town with a king in like 70 something AD. Thousands witnessed the falling of a mercury silver colored 4 foot, a very high-tech object, not just a random meteor or blob of metal, but a very high-tech object falls between the two armies, and they're like, maybe the gods don't want us to fight today, and it put out the fight. But we've had the battle over Los Angeles. Okay, there's a whole list of UFO sightings that were seen by hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people simultaneously, and not a single object. I'm talking about the instances where there's been combat. To answer your question, if you're a highly advanced human and have full conscious control of your brain, how hard is it for you to change your genes? You're in full control of your genes. What does that mean? It means that right now we have custom designer babies. You want to change a hair color. You want to change a smarts. I want mine to be better at piano. I want mine to be better at football. Dumb stuff like that. Not a holistic human being that can reconnect to this broken computer that we're on and safe mode that we're in. But why then, if we have F-18 fighter jets with mind control to weapons systems, that's a thing. We have that. If I was a wave and frequency energy controlling anti-gravity using human, maybe if I'm going to do 0 point turns at Mach 30, I should probably be shorter, white, and with eyes that have an ocular display that allow me to direct connect and see through. Our skin sees infrared. There's a whole neurologist that does a TED talk. There's a whole series on how the skin is the first organ developed in the body, but that it actually sees infrared, that there's information, there's a neural network in human skin that we aren't using, but the skin's using, and it's taking on and through information. So if you want to be in a certain kind of external technology, and right now our technology is like the technology we're using, I'm saying biological technology, but for what appears to be a gray or an alien,
Alien or something. Yeah.
right, that's a human, and that human has modified themselves for that technology that they're using to fly. However, what does the lithograph, what does this image of aerial combat and the gods fighting from the Hindu texts and the Nuremberg stuff and the other, where it appears that there was a battle in ancient times that was seen, that Wallace brings up in his book, where you have clearly some people on the planet that do not get along with each other. So that's where I like to describe the human survivors as more of like a cruise ship, kind of like the episodes of Lost, the TV show, where you have a group of people who are like, I hate your ass. I hate you. And it's like, fine, we'll take as much technology this way, and you take as much technology and go that way. And then at the end of the day, you have two warring human factions that have been on the planet, or three or four, that are not getting along, and they still don't get along, maybe.
Yeah.
Because they're not across. So, but we
Yeah,
don't
so you're
even
saying
consider,
they're here. They've always been here. They are humans. They are us.
they are us, we are them.
Yeah, but
We are
where,
in the gutters of survival.
but not, but they maybe, but I guess maybe they didn't all go back down to caveman ground zeros after.
No, we are basically like, we are Orson Welles, the badass 1960s version. We are the warlocks. We are that. We are the ground dwelling, bark eating, made it despite the disaster,
Yeah.
mixed with Denisovan, mixed with Neanderthal, mixed with whoever the hell was left on the planet that could think. And we were left to our own devices, which is why there's no disclosure. If there was a disclosure
I agree.
where you're like, you sons of bitches could have helped us, and they're like, yeah, well, Bill gave you religion, and look what you guys did with that. We're still mad at you, Bill. And like the last religion we gave you, then you guys got too metaphysical, so we started with Buddhism, and we tried this, and then we tried that, and then like, we're really sorry for the Christian thing. And you don't know, like, there are ways that they could be interacting where they're like, okay, and this is what I mean, collective human consciousness. How important is that? When you look at the remnant technologies, if we just table all the facts, from engineered soil to giant piezoelectric connected buildings with like antenna things like the Nazca lines and the Bolivian Nazca lines and the stuff in Georgia, not giant geoglyphs. I don't care about okay, I always say this as a disclosure, every moment of human history is important and interesting. I'm not being disparaging against every tribal, indigenous people who decided to worship a broken laptop. It's happening right now in the South Pacific from World War II. Von Daniken loves to talk about the tribe that has made little mini fake airstrips and have now deified some GIs that were on the island. And I mean, there are modern examples of this, but I'm just saying that we need to look past that, because we have a massive chapter of missing human history that involves that's a train, just for everyone listening. I'm right on the tracks. And so the deal is, you have a large amount of high human technology. And so what happens is we get lost in these Sumerian and Hindi and Eastern and Western, just these digressions, and they're all super interesting. They're super important, but they're not our central core mystery. We are Graham Hancock, we're a species with amnesia. That's exactly it. And it means, how far back can we start on the game of adult archaeological clue and geological clue and say, how long have we been here? Well, Michael Cremo points out in Forbidden Archaeology, we've been here. There have been anatomically correct humans that have blown away the paleoanthropological record that we theorized, which is also, like you said, what makes academics do what they do. Some of it is absolutely hubris. Who wants to stand? My favorite analogy personally is the Blinky Bard. You may have heard me say the Blinky Bard. It's for 1,000 years they bang on the Blinky board. If you bang on the one side, you get orange. You bang on the other side, you get you get red. You have a whole ritual for 1,000 years about the religious and the super sacred blinky board, which is, i.e., this is an analogy for every secret society who's ever found one half-ass piece of old technology or something that they think is important. I mean, if you drink out of a skull with sheep blood for 1,000 years, it's a thing. I mean, it's a thing. It's like you play darts every week and it's a thing. It's like, hey, we're going to play darts. But here you are with a blinky board, and someone walks up and says, why are you in the cockpit of a 747 hitting the control panel? And that's a plane. You can fly it. And they're like, heretic, burn him. And so what we have is people going, I'm kind of, well, they don't say they're woo-woo. You have the people who literally believe in crystals. Like they just believe in crystals. They don't have any logic or reasoning behind it. Literally, they just believe. And then you have paranormal, and you have all these branches of science, of pseudo, what's going to be called pseudosciences or whatever, but they don't have any concrete anything. They just believe. Now, what matters is that we are all very super complex, crazy, cool creatures that are still in safe mode on a very complex, incredible machine, the Earth, that we were once terraformed really quite well. And so the blinky board is a great analogy of what you're really doing is you're getting a response. You hit the control board hard enough for it to blink orange or red, and you've been doing it a long time. So now you have Tibetan Tomo. Now you have a way to heat yourself, but you don't teach anyone that. But Wim Hof does. Wim Hof teaches you how to control your inflammatory response. Wim Hof says, literally, he says, fucking demystify. He goes, you want a prayer? Here's a fucking prayer. It's like 5 languages. And he goes, there's your fucking prayer. Ooh, he goes, and he says that there's t-shirts, fucking demystify. You can do this. I can do this. I listened to him over and over. I watched him. I was there. And it's the truth. We have forgotten how high tech you and I are. Reactivating these abilities is not a belief thing. It's just a reality of what we are. And that we're real, that the blinky board you may through your religious secret ceremony traditions get a response from the control board, but it's not because that's what the control board is supposed to do. It might even have an effect within the spectrum of you're trying to affect health. You're trying to have second sight. You're trying to do these things that we call all these paranormal activities and abilities, or synesthesias, or pineal gland stuff. And you might have a reaction that is very what you're going to call spiritual or paranormal. You may reactivate it through drugs, even in a more positive, in a more healthy way. But at the end of the day, we're all banging on a blinky board that is, I think, a much more high-tech machine.
Yeah, I think so too.
And so it's fine to relate to it that way.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I talked to this Tibetan monk that told me that he knows lots of people who are, I was like, what do you mean lots of people? He's like, well, I know 5 or 6 people who are 300, 400, 500 years old. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, you know them? And he's like, well, so when they become 50, they go into a cave that's 100% black, dark. You can't have like not one particle of light on your skin, and you have to stay for 21 days. And then you come out, and then it reverses your age until you're about 25. Then you go back to 50, and then they do it every 50 years. Like that's just like, and you do it till you're bored and you don't want to live anymore. And I was like, well, they do some sort of meditation? Or it's like, no, I think it's just about the complete absence of light. It's not about anything else. Like you could still eat, you could still drink, you could still go to the bathroom. You don't have to meditate. There's no special thing to it. It's just you have to be in complete blackness, the complete absolute darkness for 21 days.
Was he drunk or you drunk when he told you that?
He could have been drunk. I don't know. No, I mean, like, I don't know.
Like, let's see if she'll do it. Let's see if she'll do it.
The thing is like, we don't know what we're capable
of. No, we don't. We don't.
I've never done it. I haven't gone. I don't know anybody who's gone 21 days in a complete
with no light.
Like, yeah.
I know there's that booth here in Minnesota at the U that eliminates so much sound. The longest anyone stayed in there is 45 minutes because you can hear your own heartbeat and all the sounds inside your body.
Oh, wow. That's
because there's no external white noise, none, zero, no wind, nothing. They take it all out.
so you find yourself to be super loud, I guess.
Incredibly loud. Literally, you can hear your heartbeats, your breathing. It's so terrifying to most people. Some people last a few seconds. Some people last a couple minutes. A lot of people last in the few minute range. They don't go. There's no going to 30 or 45 minutes. That's not a thing. It's apparently people freak the hell out and
Have you
have to
done
get
those
out.
sensory deprivation tanks?
No, I've never done that.
It's I if you have any cuts or anything on your body, it stings. It's like really, I mean, like your cuticles will like sting in the water. It's interesting. But yeah, I've done.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be interesting to like the whole living forever thing or the living extended periods. Like I was fascinated about that Chinese monk that they had said, he said they had IDs of him again at the turn of the century and that he was like recorded to be 600 or 700 years old. Uh, and so there was the same deal where he reached that point where I guess he had lived long enough or whatever. And he did it by living off of an herbal remedy, an herbal combination. I haven't thought about him in a long time because that wasn't a focus of, I do think that there, I do look at mummification as kind of imagine a worldwide system that's connected, that allows you and I as we travel through the solar system and we have different experiences. You're sick like with a cold. I have cancer, and it's developed because despite our entire worldwide tuning frequency energy machines, pyramids, systems, whatever, the whole atmosphere still couldn't filter out a particular storm that we travel through that was in a particular part of the galaxy. And because we're spinning, the earth is spinning, the galaxy spinning, and we go through, and it makes me have cancer and it makes you really irritated or maybe sick with a cold. Well, we go to that what we thought was a Greek Roman amphitheater, and it's not about that we can hear someone speak for a play. It's about delivering the sounds and frequencies necessary for you to be cured from your cold and me to be cured from my cancer. And then we're back to 100%. But if this entire worldwide frequency energy system was to fall apart, what if at the beginning there were machines that still worked and they're like, look, we can only handle one person at a time and we can always bring you back. But first it was freezers and coolers. And what if it eventually turned into mummifying people, or out an indigenous society was mimicking
Uh, so
the
it's like they're
waiting in
being
line?
like the mummies are cryogenically frozen in their way.
Right. They were waiting to have their turn, and the healing machine that's at the center of the
Oh, I like
sarcophagus.
that. That's interesting. I like that one. Yeah.
So those are the technologies that we imagine it to a point, but I bring up the blinky board for people to really stop, like Wim Hof said, stop mystifying the
Mhm.
technologies
Well,
and to
and you also have this really good point in your book about, like if somebody came to a nuclear the inside of a nuclear waste thing 1,000 years from now, it would have moss and everything. It would look like some sort of amazing temple. It's
Yep.
for
Yeah, I'm sorry, but yeah, I did include I'm apologizing preemptively. I included that picture of people at the solstice at Stonehenge
Stonehenge.
wearing flower wreaths and stuff, and I'm like, you people look ridiculous. I mean, it's great. You believe, and again, there's druids, there's witches, there's good people and bad people, and good societies and bad. And for a couple thousand years, they've been playing grown-ups. And so for 1,000 years, if you do something, it's a tradition. But if you do yoga for 1,000 years on Chernobyl and you feel tingly, it might still be nuclear. Or it could be that you're still sitting and doing yoga on an old, you know, nuclear factory. That's all it was. But now you think it's this special place for the solstices, and it may have been for 1,000 years or 500 years, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't a nuclear reactor. It doesn't mean that it wasn't a factory. It doesn't mean that these standing stones that are found all over the earth aren't actually likely, probably just, structural supports to large buildings that no longer exist. And so therein lies the blurred line. So it's, I think Wim Hof says it best when he says, really, he puts the emphasis on effing demystify, and you have to, because we are not looking at all, where archaeologists need to be paid to fail. They need to be paid not to find what is in the narrative of their degree. They need to be like, hey, I just found something that doesn't line up. And I've heard personally from many archaeologists, well, if I find this, I'm not going to get funded. Or if
Yeah,
I,
there's so many that have lost their careers because of
yeah,
pre-Clovis stuff, or
there you go. I think the Clovis thing is finally dying. It's such a joke.
But it killed a lot of careers in the
yeah. Shame on all of them. We should honestly hunt them down. I mean, it's just.
I also kind of find that this whole structure where the only way things are really funded is through universities, that kind of
isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like maybe this alternative community, we need to start funding each other for digs. And
funny, you should bring that up, right? So Jennifer must have talked to you about what we're doing, not just with America's Stonehenge, which Dennis has been generous enough to include me, and then Jennifer, of course, into doing some work that we're going to do there. But we are planning an archaeological dig for South America.
Oh yeah, she mentioned the Pumapunku area.
And that's exactly to prove out that the complexities of these structures, no one's ever looked at the foundations. I'm the first person up. I never wanted to be the first. I can't even say it. Like, I don't even, like how I just said it. No one's bothered to look at the foundations. They're like, where's the mummy? Where's the gold? Where's the jewels? Where's the pottery? I got 30 years. I'm going to put this pot back together.
Easter Island, like we didn't
forget that it's a pot at the, yeah. I mean, you have polygonal, again, cymatic polygonal blocks on Easter Island. And if you're going to spend 30 years, look, again, every bit of our history is important. No, that one blows my mind. You're not digging deeper because, well, nothing's going to be there. F you sideways. I mean, seriously, you call yourself an academic institution, yet none of you have tested the Paracas. You're joke. Straight up degree in jokeology. You know that the practice exists. You know that there's soft tissue. They are the oldest people on earth. And it's not just the practice. There's elongated skulls all over the world. And I'm calling out, thank God I didn't waste my time finishing. I don't want to be, I like what Karl Ehrberger said, the archeo priests. He calls them archeo priests, the religion of, I call it the religion of archaeology. And it's not the archaeologists. It's this institutionalized religion of science. Science is supposed to be science. It's not about belief. It's just show me your data and sharing failure. We're still going to learn things. And right now it's okay. Well, I guess we have to be privately funded. We have to use scientific techniques to do the work. But if we're going to rely on an academic institution to do anything that's remotely groundbreaking, literally, here all week, and to do anything with their billions of dollars that would actually forward science into a new millennium, they're not going to do it. They're too stuck in an armchair response of, I don't really want one more person to write another article about something they've already written about so that they can all pat each other on the back and oh yeah, that was a good article. Oh, you wrote a good article too. It's like one giant mental metaphysical
right that they publish in Nature magazine. It's not even readable, and like 7 people actually they circle jerk each other. Like there's not.
Yeah. No, thank God you said it too, because I was like, oh man, I'm getting too angry. I'm at that point. Look, we're all your listeners and everyone who's been listening. It's like we're 6 degrees from everyone. The reality is that it's a joke. I would love to hear. I dare any of you to pick up the Paracas and start doing the paleoanthropological and paleobiological work that would test the Paracas and that genealogy. That genealogy it's ludicrous, the story we tell ourselves. And I throw it out. Okay, so here's a positive for you stupid institutions with a lot of people's money. Here's how it works. Vegas did not want to teach people how to gamble. Their theory was that if you taught people how to gamble, more people would cheat. So I got really into Vegas in the early 2000s and watched every history episode I could on Vegas, its history, and you name it. And one of the things that they did was they started teaching people how to play craps and how to play roulette, because I wasn't going to. I'm like, how the hell do you do this? How do all these people know how to do this? How is this even done? Well, they realized that after they taught people how to gamble, that when people didn't feel stupid and they knew what they were doing, they were willing to risk money and therefore gamble because they didn't feel stupid. So suddenly they got more money. They got more money because people could participate, because they taught people how to play. So instead of losing money, they ended up making more money. So I feel academic institutions are in the same boat. It's like, don't feel stupid that you have millions of artifacts in your basement, more than likely shit you stole, but let's just assume that you didn't. Whatever. The point is that you guys have, why not put out there that you're the first institute to uncover 10,000 facts about the past that we didn't even know existed? You want people banging on your door to get a degree from you? Stop being an archaic Victorian, didn't like it when women voted joke. These are institutions that say they're supposed to be they're not at the forefront. That's why we have technical colleges. That's why we have for-profit universities. They're not at the front. Michael Dell, dropout. Bill Gates, dropout. If you're super,
like all of them.
yeah, if you're a super successful person, you didn't do it because you became a sheep in a 4-year institution. And then if you do get successful, what a joke. They give you an honorary degree. I'm not going to say no, but what the hell, folks? That should tell you something. And then there's this like little pocket club game where like, we're not even going to look at your resume unless you have a degree. Why? Because I can do the job you couldn't because you didn't get blessed by the institution. Anyway, that could be a whole nother show. Yeah. So for now, the issue is that you could be the institution that not only tables facts that no one else tabled, it would drive not only enrollment, people would bend over backwards if you were an institution that's going to say, hey, we're sending down 1,000 archaeologists to clear this temple in the period of one season. Or, and one season is going to be 18 months. Oh, and you have to pay us to come down and do it, or something. All I'm saying is that they're very short-sighted. They would have 100% collegiate enrollment if they actually doubled down on the true reality of what's going on. When you look at Teotihuacan, you have a site in Mexico that looks like a circuit grid. It looks like, that's the other thing. A lot of these monuments are laid out. The oldest ones are laid out very circuitry-ish. Mm-hmm. Just a hint.
You show some really cool comparison photos in your book, which is great.
Yeah, and so here we are with a site that if you can look at the plate photography from the 1870s, where they're like, we think this is a pyramid thing, and it looks like a pile of dirt. It took them 99 years to uncover what you can now go tour. They're not remotely done. And to your point about layers, they're not going past layers. Like the Clovis is a joke. And the people who perpetuate it, it's like a number of other fake things right now. But what we got to do is dig all the way down, explore a site for what it is, not be afraid of the facts that are found. It would produce more television. It would produce more books. It would produce more enrollment. There is literally nothing less than greed. I will appeal to your massive institutional stupidity and greed. More people will enroll if you would open this field up than for you to maintain that there is no one behind the green curtain.
The other thing is there's this whole notion that we found everything, and that is so not true. There's so much to be found.
Hey, we found you, tag. There was already people here. And now here's the other problem is that this is a delicate subject. Indigenous peoples that are like, hey, we've always been here. Well, you too came from somewhere. So if we have anatomically correct humans in the Red Crag and in Table Mountain and in all over the earth, that there's indications that the paleoanthropological history says, hey, we are not, you can't just base yourself on morphology. I get it. Like, well, we can't get DNA out of this yet. Well, it's likely you have a baboon bone, and it's also likely you found it in an open riverbed, but this in situ find over here says that that's an anatomically correct human part, and it's in a 5 million year old layer of earth. And then there's other one over here is 60 million.
You know what I'm doing next week, 2 weeks from now? I'm going to I'm in Dallas, and I'm going to Glen Rose because there is I belong to this paleo club, and
that's so nice and nerdy.
It's I belong to geology clubs. I'm in like 3 now. Anyway, but like,
yeah,
I'm a rock hunter. Anyway, uh, they, they have found like dinosaur footprints and human footprints.
Yeah.
Same thing. Well, they
Yeah.
found just within the last 6 weeks, they found like this. It's game changing. It's like this huge shelf of all dinosaurs and footprints. It hasn't been published yet, but like,
Oh my gosh, where? Take pictures. Send me
yes,
pictures. Let's talk about it.
Glenrose. Yeah, like okay, I will. I'm organizing a field trip with.
How did we not start with this? Anything that pushes back human history. This is it. I still want to get back.
Because they have found the footprints there before, but people look it off as like an anomaly, like, oh, whatever. Well, maybe the mud then got mushy again, like millions of years later, and then they walked over. But like that's the kind of stuff they say.
Somebody says that?
Yeah, like I've actually heard that theory. They were like, well, see what
With a straight
happened
face?
was that there's the dinosaur footprints, and then a couple million years later they were in a creek bed, they got to a point where they were mushy again,
reactivated,
walked on it, and then that's the theory. Yeah, so anyway,
which brings us back to Tikal and you having this background. I want to know. Yeah
okay.
So so you're gonna go visit this next week. Where is it?
Glenwood? It's in Glenrose, Texas. Yeah,
Glenrose, Texas. What did you find at Tikal as far as the details of? We got off on the granite and the specifics.
I'll send you some pictures. Actually, I'll send you some of the pictures of the stuff that I took, because I mean, I was into megaliths at the time, so I took 500 or 600 pictures. Also, I found what was really interesting is the guide was telling us that whenever they clear forest in that area, it's the soil, they can't regrow anything. So she was like,
it's considered a wet desert. That's the thing about Brazil, is that they said that it was, oh, you can't grow things here. And then they start finding Terra Preta. And there's another technique called slash and burn. And there are some primitive techniques that are used. So this is Terra Preta is not the primitive slash and burn or create your own compost. It was considered a wet desert that, this is ungrowable. And that's the other awkward thing about that, save the rainforest. And yet every time they clear a spot, there's like a ruin of an earthwork or a giant like pictograph. And it's like, ooh, it looks like this was already occupied.
Right.
And so not virgin ground. And so here you are with the same thing coming up over and over again. But at the same time,
and then the concept that perhaps the Amazon is planted.
Right. Back to terraforming the earth. Back to, I think trees, I reference a scientific paper that from a seismic metamaterial standpoint, which means the science behind earthquake management, building construction would also include external objects like trees, soil, sifted soil, plugged soil with like random holes that to control the effects of earthquakes and to create safe zones, but to really manage that kind of disaster. There's a lot of techniques right down to nano-sized objects, all the way up to things like Hyperion, like a 60 diameter, 380-foot tree, that if you were to plant everything in a particular way, you would be able to create a very safe area for buildings and people and other things. So the reality is that we have a very rando idea of, nature. There's no playbook for everyone out there who keeps listening. It's like those stupid Georgia Guidestones. There should only be in the future doves and birds and love. There should only be 500 million people. Who the hell told you that there should be 500 million people, you idiot?
Capacity of this planet.
Again, put everybody, it's like that is such an ignorant, dangerous, because then there happens to be some diabolical James Bond type bad guys on the planet who are like, I could go with 30% less people on the planet. That sounds great. Now, I can't argue with some of the people who are still burning people at the stake for their sexual preference, mutilating girls in Africa. I could think of a number of people that I would be happy if they weren't here, because it's not the Middle Ages and you shouldn't be genitally mutilating. That's a big thing for me. I hate that. I hate that you marry into the wrong tribe. The idea that we are literally living in the dark ages still, that's got to be over. You don't have to carry an Android or cell phone of some kind, but honest to God, the people who are practicing some of these utter barbaric inhumane, unhuman practices, they need to be done. But does that mean you should automatically eliminate 2 billion people because you think the planet should have less? Disgusting, gross. I'm
Yeah.
reminding you all out there, at 15% plus consciousness or minus, and not to mention genetically we're all differently, and the use of that 15% may look very different between Einstein and us or whatever. At the same time, collective human consciousness requires RAM. So the person that you're devaluing that lives in a forest that you think, well, yeah, so they know how to make some medicinal meds, but look at modern society, they're worthless. I don't think that's true. I think that the reason we're not just coming up with corkscrew, unflyable uh, planes that look like something from the Renaissance, and the reason we're coming up with graphene conductors is not just a history and a build of already papered and published science. It's also the intuition that comes with a collective
You
human,
think
the
the
power.
more people, the more collective RAM
Yep.
is for
Yep.
society to grow into this. Okay.
Yep.
I like that stance.
Yeah. So that means you really have to look at valuing people in a way that they have. And again, that there is science behind collective human consciousness. There is science, but it always gets, and again, part of it is our upbringing. Part of it is our upbringing into even the world of science. We look at it as an individual. When we say society, it's really easy to think, oh yeah, like everything that's between me and Barnes and Noble and Starbucks, that's society. Or we think, oh, it's between it's between the shows I do watch and the shows I don't watch online. It's between the books I read and the books I don't read. It's between the type of exercise I do and the type of hiking someone else does. We always look at it personally. And then when we think, oh yeah, paranormal, ghosts, past lives, and if it's a past life, it's your past life. No, what if it's a collective consciousness rammed
Yeah.
past
I
life?
talked to a Lakota elder yesterday, and she was talking about blood memory. She was like, "Oh, I'm really good. I'm really happy that like I was taught from an early age how to access my blood memory." And I
That's
was like,
so interesting.
"Wait, what? What do you mean you can access your blood memory?" And she was like, "Well, we have memory in our blood. All of us do. You do too."
100%. 100%. I mean, I try to tell people that when you tap in, there's also that aurora, like the Carillion photography, there's an aurora around us. There is a concept that everything that makes up your memory and who you are is actually also stored not only in the collective RAM, but around you, that it's not just in your brain or in your body. That
Yeah, I mean, like I've looked into the whole what's that guy, the morphic fields, the Rupert Sheldrake. I don't know if you've ever looked into any of his stuff but like
no, but there's another guy, I'm blanking on his name. Olav likes to talk about him, but that was his whole theory. The collective consciousness is also a memory bed for your own storage system.
yeah, it's like the hard drive, and we're working
Yeah.
on the desktop here. So do you like have you ever done psychedelics?
No, so I grew up, at a very young age, I almost died of a nut allergy. I almost died when I was 3.5, 4. I was at a party and I was eating nuts. My parents didn't know. I was in an age where we risked children's lives. And so I go into shock. They give me 2 shots of an adult dose of adrenaline at the emergency room. And they're like, your son's allergic to stuff. And then it comes to find out that they're like, well, he's allergic to life. And I'm not the boy in the bubble, but then it was, my mom has a background in biology and chemistry, and she's like, I'm not going to give him shots. He'll be fine. He'll grow out of it. So we didn't have pets for a really long time. Got a dog eventually when I was like 15, 16. But then, it's supposed to have no curtains. It was supposed to be blinds because they're easier to clean, hardwood floors and carpets. And then they're like, you're also allergic to alcohol, which is ironic because I'm Irish, very Irish, a lot of Irish, a little French,
That's
but
probably why you're
Murphy, yeah, Murphy, O'Davern, and then a little, so then, of course, I'm 14 now, and I'm at my first big redneck party because I grew up in a very practical, America, capital M sort of neighborhood. And I'm at my first field house party, which is basically for some people a barn, but we call them field houses because it was a field house. It was made out of metal. It was like, and there was beer. And I am like, I'm going to do what every 14-year-old / teen does, is I'm going to participate. I had 2 ounces and I had the worst sore throat in about 30 seconds. So at 14, I think, oh, uh, I'm really allergic to alcohol. So then I go on to become a bartender. I never drank anything that I had uh, was mixing, yet apparently I was a really good drink mixer. And then eventually I got told by a doctor, you're probably allergic to the yeast or something in beer. You could probably drink all the hard liquor you want. But by then I'm 22 and I have no peer pressure, so I don't drink. And my grandfather smoked 5 packs a day. So on the other side, they're like, have you ever smoked anything? And I'm like, are you crazy? My sinuses would be completely stuffed. My so I never smoked anything, never did anything. They're like, dude, have you tried drugs? And I'm like, dude, nuts kill me. No, and
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. And so I stayed away from everything. And then I went paleo a few years ago, and it doesn't mean that I think we're all food addicts. I mean, we all are. We have such all of us have such a misunderstanding of what, like if we were a Ferrari,
We're
you
just
don't
so
take,
disconnected from our food source.
yeah,
We really are.
yeah, what it is and what it's for. We're so not where we should be. But when I went paleo, my allergies went away. So I'm not telling you to be paleo is a lifestyle. It's not a diet. And and it's not all about meat, because ironically I'm allergic to nuts. So it's really funny. I'm not a huge meat eater, and I can't eat nuts, which, macadamia nuts are a superfood. Almonds are a superfood, and I cannot eat either. So here we are with my allergies, 100% morning allergies, hangriness, all that goes away when you eat more in a better way for yourself. It doesn't mean you don't eat fun stuff or drink cool stuff. It's just that, once I cut the sugar down, it's about my total carb sugar intake is supposed to be around 30, it's about 27 to 35 grams a day. But then that changed a lot of things for me. And then, you know, what I think as far as the psychedelic program goes, I've studied like Graham Hancock and New Earth Lady. I've studied, I mean, she's done like, I think at the time I was studying, the last thing she had said was 157 trips, ayahuasca trips, Graham Hancock's work. And I've looked at it intensely. And it is interesting to me that it seems that people who do it make a point to say, hey, if you do it, you can't access those realms without it again. Is that you have to keep doing it naturally, but if you don't, once you access it one way, you can't get back there on your own. It's kind of like weightlifters if we decided to do
I haven't
steroids.
found that to be true. I found like it showed me the way to get there, and that
All right, see,
see, but
that's fascinating.
I have only done I I'm not a big drug person in general, and or
Of course
alcohol.
she's not for anyone listening. She's never done this. This is
Yeah,
just a
but
dream.
first time I did mushrooms, I was 35, and I had never done
Oh,
anything.
wow. Time travel. You mean like in 7 years from now? All right.
Yeah, I'm 38 now, but anyway, so it was like I don't know. We're 7 people. We were in the redwood forest, and they were giving out bags, and like they were passing out peanut butter. There was like 7 of us, and our sitter, like the guy who was going to be sober, was just passing everybody a spoonful of peanut butter to take with their mushrooms. So I ate one mushroom before he got around to me. I was the last one, and I was like, oh, it's not that bad. So then I just ate all of them. I ate my whole bag of mushrooms, and I think it was like, there
I
was
don't think that's called a microdose.
nope. Yeah, it was like 9 or 12 mushrooms. It was a heroic dose, and I had a heroic ego death. And it was both the worst and the best thing I've ever experienced in my life. But yeah, so like
What
it
happened?
I went to first of all, I started seeing fairies and like gnomes and all kinds of shit coming out of the forest. I have a whole video on it. But then the fairies told me to go back to I had to be away from everybody. I went back to my tent, and then I died. I like left my body, and I got to look at my body, and I went out at the redwood forest. I went, once I got past the moon, everything digitized. It wasn't real. It all digitized. And then I was like, I was back with, and I don't like the word God because it sounds like a person, and I don't like the word heaven because that sounds like a place. It was electricity. I was back with the electric source of whatever
Something.
existence is, or something, or at least within my own mind's eye, that felt like it. And I had this pull within, like my own energy kept on trying to pull me out and say like, no, not yet, not yet, you can't.
Yeah.
And I was like, why not? It's fucking not even real. I don't want to go. I didn't know I was a girl. I didn't know I was Nikki. I didn't know I was human. I had no idea. And I felt like I was there longer than I've been alive here. And anyway, the one thing that I took away, well, I cut out a couple of things. Like when I came back, I've always been able to hear electricity. Now I can hear people's electricity in their body. And that's never gone away. That's just like stayed with me since then. And I know it's there because it's like a running refrigerator, you know, like I can like get next to a
Oh,
person and I can hear their so that never went away. But then also uh I had this concept that it was like the source energy of everything doesn't even know the why it exists, so it fragmented itself into infinite amount of possibilities in order to try to understand itself better. So like that's the kind of reasoning that I took away as to why there's existence at all.
that's super cool. I found that of the because it is kind of an astronaut sort of thing to do the work that you're doing. I think I'm all for people trying it.
See, I'm
I
actually not
pers
for all people trying it though, because I know very few people that could have integrated that. Not that I'm not tooting my own horn saying I'm good or bad, but I'm just saying that there's so many people that have so many issues, and that's what it's gonna fucking come up for you. It's very, you know, like people get into some very weird psychological places and they come back and they are not okay sometimes. So
yeah.
you know, I don't think it's for everybody. If you're called to do it,
No, and yeah, because I do think that it's like my description is I said, well, from my impression and study, I believe it's a lot like deciding, hey, let's take steroids and we're both going to have this physical response in our body and be this kind of a weightlifter in 6 months. And it's like there are penalties to pay for that.
yeah.
And mentally, I don't want a smaller mental penis. Or for instance,
Right, right.
but it could be much worse. And I know I'm making light of it, but the reality is that there does seem to be a repercussions that are frequently unexpected. It's not the only horror story. There are definitely experiments that I think are best left through, again, positive gene expression. It's not a new term, but what you eat, how you meditate, like having not a woo-woo meditation where you're like waiting for your cloud problems to float away, never going to work for me. But like the Wim Hof stuff, the cold showers, you, by the way, as you learn how to do it, you're doing the meditation in the cold. It's quite a trippy thing. Yeah, and that electric field thing is right there. I think you'd be a good candidate to and by the way, when I had to take my first cold shower for 30 seconds, that was painful. I hate it. I walk around now at 20 below zero. I wear sandals, like it's Minnesota, it's cold. Not now. Now it's like super warm. It's 60 today now. But it's not about just getting used to it. It's about doing it also in the heat. Wim Hof has done it in both. He did 50 miles in the desert and controlled his inflammatory response, his heating and cooling. And he did it with, I mean, don't try to do what he did if you can go look up what he did, but he did repeat the experiment with no water and 50 miles in the desert. And that's pretty trippy. But I do think mentally, if you don't build yourself into that complex, those dynamics between this plane and whatever other plane there is, astroplaning, whatever you want to call it, I do think that you can build your way there naturally. I just think it's a much longer, I have no idea what that looks like because I don't think I'm any expert, or I don't think I'm there. I think I understand the bones of it. And I think I'm doing my own experiments and I think I'm happy with my results and I want better and more results. But because of like mushrooms, I'm allergic literally to mushrooms. So I don't bring up everything. I don't really think I'm allergic to that many things, but if I make the list, it gets big. And it's just mushrooms and nuts, tree nuts, not, and they're like, does that mean peanuts? It's like, no, peanuts are not a nut. Why are they called peanuts? But they're not a nut.
Well, I did ayahuasca in Colombia and it is very gentle compared to my mushroom trip. Mushrooms was like, good God. And
Okay.
that's yeah.
Yeah, but you weren't supposed to eat the whole bag.
That's true, but I even then like recently in December, for the second time ever doing mushrooms, I did mushrooms and I did just 3 grams, which was supposed to be like a very normal dose. had another ego death. And that was so I kind of think mushrooms might be like my thing that takes me out of this universe. So I don't, and I at that time I decided, like, I think I'm good. I think I'm happy
Done
being
enough.
back here. I think I'm done. I think I've experienced what I wanted to experience with the psychedelics.
I like that you're constantly having ego deaths too. It's like, hey, my ego's
No,
back.
I've just
Yeah.
had two. I've just had two ego deaths, but they were both on mushrooms, and they were crazy though. But on ayahuasca, it was more just like I got to see the energetic webbing of the ether, like the air
Oh,
that
that's
I
interesting.
could see the energetic webbing of my body, and then I could see how it was connected and the thickness of it in the air, and then on to other people. It was that was an interesting. You understand plant consciousness, so like you basically understand how they perceive time. So that's sort of what I felt. So I felt like I was in the perspective of breathing like a plant breathes and experience
Yeah.
like fractals the way they do. So I don't know, those things are valuable
That's
for people. I really do think they are. Not, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater with them, but I think people need to do them responsibly, and they need to uh yeah, have somebody. It really helps not doing it by yourself in the middle of the woods on too many. It really helps when you have like an actual
yeah.
shaman person who knows what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, and this is where again, it's not that it might not be the actual experience may not be incredible. It is incredibly important and valuable. This is what I mean about the Blinky board. You know, we're 10 to 15% conscious of beings that exhibit abilities from synesthesia to the Wim Hof stuff, where I think we are banging on the Blinky board and we're getting a response. It's
Right.
a very amazing response, but I think we're getting a very disconnected, un there's no way to define the response to what it really is because we've deified it. And
How
I
do we
think
figure out how to fly the plane?
right, exactly. And so I don't think it's the guy dancing around it in the grass skirt that doesn't know that it's not a plane. So part of the problem is that you have dynastic peoples creating religions and mystifying and traditions and deifying techniques that were once very advanced um, connections and technologies that are part of the cellular in the human body, where now it's like it's very easy to slip into a psychedelic conversation and say, oh well, make sure you have a shaman, and if anyone, even the expert blinky board
It doesn't have to be
banger.
a shaman. It has to be somebody that can see when you're going off to like Never Never Land. They can
Yeah.
pull you back down to reality and
Yeah.
like let you know, hey,
Yeah.
this is gonna be okay. Like that's what you need. That you
Yeah.
not do it alone. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a shaman, but you
Yeah.
have to have somebody who can like,
Medical professionals need to be standing by.
yeah,
I do think I do think it's valuable. I do think it's important, but I think that that road to us really understanding how that connects to this entire system, I do think that those were spaces that we didn't have to use psychedelics at one point. I think it was something we
yeah,
were, when you
I
talked about
agree.
yeah, so like that, I'm a big essential oil person. I make my own all sorts of lotions and creams, and
Ooh,
yeah, I do all that. I have my own little apothecary that I've been working on for years, and
I
I
would
work
love to
with,
get into that. That sounds awesome. I have a friend
oh,
who's
it's
doing that.
super fun. Yeah. Yeah, the essential oil program, what I was getting to is that the capstone of vibrational medicine, and we'll have no time to get into it, but for everyone out there to just like teaser, is imagine a day where we didn't have to eat anything in particular. Imagine just literally through the ground, the way you're connected, the vibrational energy. And I don't mean woo woo. I mean, literally, instead of having to extract and burn 10 tons of a particular plant that you wanted aloe vera out of, what if the very essences of on the microbial level, that the very smells, the very uh, terraformed volumes of it on the planet, the way you walked and moved, there was enough within the system that what is a tincture or what is a homeopathic remedy, uh, the one thing that they noticed in the late 1700s when the German scientist that was developing cure, like the like for like deal, the whole concept of how you dilute down a remedy, and it seemed like the most diluted, where it was almost just an echo of the original plant, was the most powerful. What if we were at a point where we were so tuned in that just being in the presence of those plants, you didn't have to kill them or burn them, it was just their vibrational energy, and it was just your presence was all that was needed, and that energy transfer was there without, and it was because we had fully activated pineal glands. It was because we were 100% conscious, that it wasn't just a uh, etheric out of body surrealism, but very grounded, very physiologically. We were quite aware of just being in this presence and walking on this path and being with these people, and that energy system was in full harmony and connected to where, and did, like, we could walk by an aloe vera plant if we didn't need it, but the melaleuca was working just fine. The tea tree was great, but we didn't have to extract it by destruction.
Yeah,
We
almost like
could.
we were breatharians or something, could have been.
Oh, yeah, there we go. That's exactly you. This whole thing was leading to you saying that.
Well, it seemed like, yeah.
Yeah. But it's so funny because these are, again, they're all echoes of, I think, truths, where we have, again, we keep banging on the blinky board and things work, but we're not stepping fully back and going, well, why is this thing an astral plane thing? Why is this a homeopathic thing? Why is this why is this thing over here
Why
just
leave
strictly a
us?
placebo?
But my thing is like, why? I do feel like we are a species with amnesia 100%, but then but like in a way that's almost cruel in a way. Like even if we did go through some
Yes.
massive deluge and or a series of them over million
Yeah.
thousand years, you would think like somebody would have been like, hey, here's a manual, or but I mean the manuals they gave you to your instrumentation is just like, here's how you
No.
make bread.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. They get, you have Veracocha, you have a red-bearded, red-headed dude showing up and going, hey, here's how you plant stuff. Here's some basic language stuff. Here's some math. 2 + 2 bushels makes 4. You need 20 this season. And this is when your season starts, and you should get to it. Next, it's almost like you can say a high-tech culture ran around the planet and got a lot of people that were really just nomadic people to get back into the farming program, get back into the sedentary, we need you guys to settle down. And then that other tribe they're running around killing people, but they'll stop when they figure out farming. So you guys figure out the farming, warring tribe will take over you guys. But now we got 20 million nomads settled down over here. We got 100 million nomads on this continent settled down over there. And it was almost like a way of managing the masses. It was like, look, we can pull a Lord of the Ring, King's Keep sort of thing, or we can get these hordes to settle down a little, and we don't need to hit all of them. So kind of like an ancient high-tech alien Peace Corps, they come out of their bunkers and they're like, well, we can live on the surface. These people are too dumb, too backwards to get what we are, where we are. We can't help them all. We have to recollect a lot of old technology. I mean, were they underground? Were they just underground for hundreds of years, thousands of years? Was it just a 50 or like 1.5 generations? And then is the echo? I don't like the idea, the mythology behind Atlantis, but the recot structure. I think Jimmy from Bright Insight, his work is dead on. The recot structure does look like the Eye of Africa was
Yeah, I
Atlantis,
like
but
that video. That was
I,
amazing.
yeah, and I just think that maybe we use it as an example to say, just like those Nuremberg spaceship battles, and just like the references in the Vedas, what if Atlantis really is the last post Younger Dryas location that an advanced human race chose to live in the open? What if that recot structure was the last remnant of, yeah, hey, look, Veracocha's heading out to South America, got to teach them corn. Got to, like, so like 100 representatives out of what, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000? How many people would live in the structure? Who knows? I mean, how many were left and how many decided to live? And if they were even one society, it's like, well, this society's come back to the surface. This other society, again, high-tech humans that control genomes, they're like, nah, let's stay underground.
So
We have
where
high
do you think they're
technology.
underground at? Do you think they're in the oceans?
I definitely think ocean locations are no-brainers. Anywhere you've seen witness accounts. So we have the Japanese Bermuda Triangle,
I like
the
the weird triangle.
uh, Dragon Triangle. We have the Bermuda Triangle. We have the weird one in North and the Arctic or Alaska-ish and Antarctica. The reality is we have weird anomalies. We have the Eye of Argentina, or the the weird floating granite structures that, I mean, there's a number of things that look like the planet was very uniquely terraformed and used energy fields and ley lines in a very real pragmatic way. But then at the same time, I bring up Hyperion in my book. They found it in 2008. It's a 380-foot tree. How do you not notice that? It didn't get noticed, at least by modern loggers or anyone. And then you have 1.57 to 1.3 million penguins on the danger islands. That, we love penguins, we've all seen the documentaries, yet there's a super colony that no one noticed. They're in their black and whites, they're on the surface, they're not tiny penguins, but there's no one noticed 1.3 million super colony.
Yeah.
So how hard is it for a high-tech human that can fly, apparently, according from video of the Tic Tac? How hard is that to hide? How hard is that to not be seen? How hard is that to show up? My favorite is Rick and Morty and his battery. I don't know if you're a Rick and Morty fan.
I know. I'm not. I
Are
need
you a
to.
Rick and Morty fan?
I know. I've never watched it, but I need to watch it because I
Oh,
everybody in the world
well,
tells me I need to watch it. So yeah.
oh, you got to watch
All right.
in order, next to Letter Kenny. And I think Letter Kenny is, everyone's like, I think Letter Kenny's funnier than Rick and Morty. And that's a tough thing to say because they're really like two different things. It's like having a world with two Coca-Colas. Anyway, so here it is. Rick is, his spaceship won't take off because he has a battery that's really a micro universe. He actually put a universe inside of a battery. So it's an infinite universe that really what they're doing is they think Rick is a god, but in reality, all they do is make electricity for him to run his car. And 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 so Rick and Morty, his grandson, go in and he says, here's these uh here are these antenna with some little balls on the end. You need to look alien. We're aliens. And so you have all these people creating these dialogues about Palladians and grays and whites, and oh my gosh, they have all these stories, and it's like it's you're so easy to assume that they're from somewhere else and that it's not a
Yeah.
divergent human society that hates each other's guts. One decided to come to the surface, one stayed underground. Maybe one was just off world and just says, look, it's like, it's your fault the last catastrophe happened. It's your fault. The Hatfields and McCoys. This is
Yeah.
like a bizarre.
Well,
Uh,
and there's also the concept of, like most people live inside their homes, not on top of their homes, and we are on a planet, and it seems like the safest place to be would be, you know, you don't have to worry about solar flashes or,
yeah,
whatever
a
asteroids
f-
or whatever,
yeah,
giant
or
flood,
yeah,
disasters.
you naturally don't get hit by a meteor if you're underground.
Yeah.
Uh, Not that maybe there was a time period where they were flying through masses that it was more common to get hit by something. But I don't think that building megalittically, it wasn't just that they were moving large blocks. Things that should get in people's heads as as we're getting where we are, is think about the technologies it takes to identify the stones, cut the stones, actual machinery. And then the machinery itself has technology, and then the shapes of the blocks and what and again, finishing materials are gone. Stop looking at stuff with lean-tos. Stop looking at they could cut very complex blocks, but they had log ceilings and lean-tos. That's just disproportionate to the level of technology, right down to the engineered soil. It is disproportionate to the society that would build and move thousands or hundreds of miles, and not just that, but 2 miles in the air from like sea level to 13,000 feet in the air, like Lake Titicaca. We're talking about a society that's using equipment and moving throughout the planet on a global society that, the last thing I'll say, has nothing less than a significant amount of ruins that are underwater. We are telling ourselves a fraction of the play of humanity if we aren't willing to once make, as difficult as it is, maritime archaeology a priority over land archaeology, and then to potentially increase enrollment, whether it's for-profit universities or otherwise. But imagine what a skilled 1,000-person archaeological team could do with just one acre plat of, there's so much we could do, not just to uncover it, but to manage the soil, the other chemistries and interdisciplinary sciences, to manage modern archaeology with what is coming to be nanoarchaeology. I mean, there's a lot of things to discuss with how we uncover and reveal that, simultaneously looking at the societies that were literally going, oh, there's another UFO, and that wasn't military. And so whether or not it is, and again, it's not that there's not entities from another planet, it's that, why are you starting with the assumption that every entity you see, because they look different than you silly monkey, are not from here, that they're different from us, that they're just not genetically modified humans? In The Singularity is Near by Kurzweil, in the future, if you want to look like Snoopy and you and me, Charlie Brown, we could do that. It would, they're just mitochondrial DNA. We can just program it. And if you don't want to even be if you don't even want to have genetic material, if you want to be organic the way we know it, if you wanted to have a body that's diamondoid crystalloid,
light or something. Yeah.
yeah, you don't have to have the body. Every year, 6 months, you have a new body.
Yeah.
Every cell in your body is gone. So what makes you? What's your soul? What makes you when every cell in the body is replaced? You're not, if you and I don't see each other for a year, we're definitely new people.
Oh yeah. I thought it was 3 months every cell was replaced, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, so there's different parts of the body. Some things replace in a week, some things replace in 30 days, some place in a few months. And I had heard that it was 3 to 6 months. And now there's some structures in the body where I'm like, okay, gosh, okay, let's throw out a general number, because apparently it's 6 months to a year. Is it more likely that most of you is brand new in about 3 to 6 months? Yes. But then I'm like, okay, guys, if you're all going to argue about this, then fine.
Just say
Just say 6 months to a year. But either way, it's like a tremendous number.
yeah.
I mean, to think that every cell in your body is new. So who the hell are we if we're not able to morph and change what that is over time, and not over a random amount of grow time like a plant, but intentionally program yourself to be younger, older, change your talents, to change your physiology, to be, like you said, it could be a diamondoid crystalloid or system for the organics of your cellular structure, or you could still be organic, but you could look like anything you want. It's just, so you want to be a reptilian, you want to be a gray, uh, again, stop.
Whatever. Yeah.
Right. If you want to make the assumption that that is a different species on this planet, it
Well, and
assumes
if
that
you ask
all
where they're
along.
from and they say up there, that doesn't, like, one, you don't have to believe them, and
No,
two,
that's called the Rick and Morty thing. Yeah. Two.
yeah.
Yeah. No, what's your two?
Oh,
It's,
my
you
two.
don't
Oh,
have to
well, you don't
believe
have to
them.
believe them, and two, it's like, why would they tell you?
Yeah. It's like, actually, we really could help you guys out more. But again, every time we do, we screw it up. And then if we help you, we got to help others, or you'll just get pissed when you find out how much we could have helped you. Sorry about grandma having cancer. We definitely could have fixed that. I mean, her disease was as easily fixed as our tuning instrument for the crap we read from Mars. That would just piss us off. That's why I say it's not aliens worse, it's us. That's part of the worst part. In the title of my book, it's like, oh my God, what if it, I think people would lose their mind
Yeah, because
more
when
so.
you figure out how big this cover
Yeah.
up or whatever is, it's very sad.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's like worse. What if we find out it really is our ancestors' fault, that this whole condition we live in, what if we find out that they literally murdered, like, look, Will, we didn't get along. There were some people that look like you,
Nuclear
you,
war.
and you.
Okay.
Yeah. What if they say, well, they wiped out 20 billion of us, so we wiped out 100 billion of them? You know, what if the planet really was a couple hundred billion? And what if it really was integrated, but yet had its, I, there are some really sad points where it's like, okay, yeah, well, actually we came up with this thing and it turned out to we wiped ourselves out, or whatever it is, or despite that, there was XYZ still in the, no matter what the story is, if it involves our ancient advanced ancestors, it involves people that, whatever their explanation is, if they were openly honest, I think involves a lot of anger and frustration from people like us who, once we understand the scale and scope of it, are going to feel really betrayed and or misused or used or enslaved. I think there's a lot to it that makes disclosure not
Yeah.
practical because,
And that's
yeah.
why I don't
So
actually think true disclosure from a government entity is ever going to come.
no, and it's been pointed out, Michael Hall and I were talking about this the other day, but the actual bill that's coming, that there's going to be a release of
Oh yeah,
information. Remember, there was a huge, I
yeah,
know, there was a huge dump of info from the
whatever.
CIA. Right. So how much of it is going to be the repeat info of what the CIA? I mean, there is sharing of information. So how much of it is just going to be a repeat of what they dumped? What was it, a year ago from the CIA?
Yeah.
Year and a half? It's just going to be, it could just be duplicate paperwork. And my friends read the legislative body. He used to work with the legislature here, and he read the language. It's like flight times. They don't even have to disclose by June, but specifically it's like, so you saw a ship, where and when and what, give us a basic description. That's all they're disclosing. Not
Well,
like, hey, there's an underground city with a tram service.
exactly. And that's, the other thing is, like, I'm at a point where I'm sick of like having to come from a pilot or a military person to be legit, like, or to be, like that somehow makes you more valid. I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I'm a little bit over that storyline too. But one last thought I'll say before we go is, like, maybe us and all the alternative community should start our own university.
Michael Hall has an award ceremony for the paranormal sciences. He's already hosted one, and we're talking about hosting one in Florida. And so it would be a chance to recognize people who are doing research and give them an award, but also have, breakout conferences, have people with like minds get together and not just rehash the same stories, but like, what's our latest and how far have we come? What's our latest
Yeah, we're
stories? What's our
needed
latest
here.
information?
Yeah.
Try a session of Wim Hof, do not just have morning yoga and do summer salutations to the eggplant goddess of the octopus, not just do that. And, it's like, hey, another reason to get drunk and get high. It's like, sure, but let's maybe start having an annual gathering where, one, we can recognize people who do the work the way, like, are putting the spotlights on things like the Paracas or what have you, but then from physicists, like all across fields of science, but basically do it like any other kind of what we would call an alien con or something, but to do it with that awards ceremony in mind. So you can get your woo woo on, and you can also wear maybe a black tie.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go to the paranormal Oscars and also go to a convention and have some fun. But do it with some of the people who are doing the work, like this archaeologist in Tikal, and what are the latest LiDAR scans, and what is the research that's pointing to the front edge of what we know to be true. As an I'm kind of a way funner archaeological congress that no one's offended when you drink.
Sounds like a
Uh,
plan.
yeah, no, this is great. I really appreciate you having me on for the first time here. This is
Yeah,
great.
I thank you so much for coming on. You've been awesome. So yeah, this
Oh,
is
thanks.